Hey there, it's Liz from No Trace. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a super cute zipper pouch with boxed corners. This design is super awesome because you don't end up with any cutout boxed corners. This sews up from rectangles and there's no offcuts made in the process. And this is also a really nice size. It holds tons of pencils and markers, or if you're like me, I wear contacts and glasses, and when I travel, this is the perfect size for my glasses and my contact solution. So it's a really great size. And this is also the perfect way to put some of your scraps of fabric to good use. So let's go. In order to make your zipper pouch, you're going to need a 10-inch zipper, or cut a longer zipper down to 10 inches. You'll also need 2 pieces of lining fabric that are 8.5 inches tall and 11 inches wide. You also need 2 pieces of cotton batting that are 8.5 inches tall and 11 inches wide. And then you need lots of strips of fabric that are 8.5 inches tall and whatever width you want to work with. These I cut to about 2 to 2.5 inches wide, and these will get pieced together on top of the cotton batting. Then the last thing you'll need is 2 smaller strips of fabric. These are 1.5 inches wide and 7 inches tall, and these are going to be used as binding over our raw edges on the inside of the bag, so they don't have to be in a fabric that matches the liner or the outside, so you could use up small scraps that you have on hand. You're also going to need 6 inches of ribbon cut into 2 3-inch pieces. I just used some scraps of fabric to make a little ribbon-like piece, but you could use actual ribbon or you could make your own from whatever you have. You could even use some cording if you don't have any kind of ribbon. The first step is that we are going to be attaching these strips of fabric onto our batting, and you could think about whatever kind of pattern you want to do. I'm going to try to do a pattern that repeats on the second panel, so that's what I'm going to be going for. So in the first step, I'm going to just stitch this piece onto the batting. I've got the wrong side on the batting, and I'm going to just stitch straight down with a 5mm stitch length, so the stitches are going to be a bit larger. And I'm just going to do a row all the way down, starting at the far right edge. So once this first row of stitches is done, I'm going to go ahead and add a couple more rows of stitches to really lock this piece onto the batting and also to give it some nice texture. And as you stitch this fabric onto the batting, you don't really need to do a back stitch at the start or stop, because we're going to be adding so many rows of stitches on top of each strip of fabric. And when you get near the edge of your first strip of fabric, just go ahead and grab your second strip and place it with the right sides facing each other. And then we're going to go ahead and stitch these 2 together with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So then go ahead and do a finger press so that this second strip lays pretty flat. And then we're just going to repeat the process of adding the stitches on top of the new strip to give it that quilted look. And then just go ahead and repeat those same steps until the whole piece of batting is covered with strips of fabric. So now that this panel of the bag is done, I'm going to repeat the same steps on my second piece of batting. And I'm actually going to be placing my strips in the opposite direction so that when I put my bag together, they will line up with one another across the zipper. So rather than starting with a dark piece on the right side, I'm actually going to start with the dark piece on the left side, and then I'm going to work my way down the panel this direction. So after this piece is attached, I will add this piece and attach it, then a yellow piece to match this yellow, and then this has a little otter on it, so then the otter piece would go after the yellow piece and so forth, and that way they'll be the same when they're on the zipper together. So once the both of the panels are done, we're going to go ahead and trim them so that they are both nice, even rectangles. So I'm putting them with the right sides facing each other, and then I'm just going to straighten up the edges and make sure that it's still about 8.5 inches tall. I'm going to trim right here. Always save your scraps. This can be used for pillow stuffing or dog beds, or if you use all natural fibers, you can compost this. So save your little scraps. And I'm going to flip this around and just straighten up this other side. And then I'm going to check that my width is still 11 inches. And those sides look pretty good. I'm just going to trim this side a little bit. The batting got moved around a little bit. Okay. So now we have our two pieces and they are the same size, so we're ready to assemble the bag with the zipper and the liner pieces. So start with just one of your outer panels, and you want to put the right side of the zipper face down at the top edge of your outer panel, and then line up the edge of the zipper tape with the edge of the panel and go ahead and clip it together in at least a few spots. I think I'll use 4 clips here. And then bring over one of your liner pieces, and you're going to want to get that inside your clips as well. If your liner piece has a print on it, you want the pretty side to be facing the pretty side of your outer layer. If you're using a solid like me, it doesn't matter because there's no right or wrong side, but you do want the right sides together if you have any kind of a print. And then go ahead and get this into the clips so that the edge is also lined up with your zipper tape edge, just like that. And then we're ready to take it to the machine and stitch straight along here. When you're at your machine, you're going to want to replace your regular presser foot with a zipper foot, unless you have a machine that has a really narrow standard foot. So I'm going to get out my zipper foot, which looks like this, and I'm just going to pop it in onto my machine, just like that, so it clicks into place. And then I'm also going to put my stitch length back down to 3. I tend to sew at about 3 millimeters. Because remember, we had it up really long for the quilting that we did here. So get it back onto your default, and now we'll just stitch straight down this sort of zipper sandwich that we created with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and the width of this presser foot is about 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to be keeping my fabric in line with the edge of my zipper foot. And you do want to do a back stitch at the start and the stop of this row of stitches. So just go forward a little and then reverse. And then just go straight down. We're getting near the zipper pull, so what you want to do is move that zipper pull out of the way by just pushing it, lifting up your presser foot, and then pushing this zipper pull back towards the back. Okay, so now we've pushed the zipper pull all the way down to here, and then we can continue our row of stitches all the way to the end of the zipper. And again, do a little back stitch there. So you want to double check that you caught all of your layers in your seam, which we did. And then what we're going to do is take this to the iron, and we're going to press the panels away from the zipper on the outside and on the inner layer of fabric. Once it's pressed on the outer layer and the inner layer, we're ready to take it to the sewing machine and do a straight stitch all along the edge to really hold all this fabric in place away from the zipper. So now we'll go ahead and just stitch straight down. And when you get near the zipper pull again, you want to lift your presser foot and then just push the zipper out of the way, and then just keep going right to the end. Okay, so we did our top stitching, and now what you want to do is repeat all of those same steps on the other side of your zipper. So go ahead and attach your other outer piece with the right side facing the right side, and the way that we stitched it was that we reversed, if you remember, so we reversed the pattern so that these patterns now will line up on the bag. So just get that right there, and again you're going to clip it to the zipper, making sure that the edge of the panel is lined up neatly with the edge of the zipper tape. And again, add in your lining piece. Get that in the clips, just like so. And then we'll go ahead and we'll stitch straight along this edge just like we did, and then we'll press that and then we'll top stitch that again. So once you've top stitched both sides of your panels onto your zipper, now we're going to take the little 3-inch piece of ribbon, and we are going to be stitching it onto the ends of our zipper, right about 1/4 inch away from the end of the zipper on both sides. So one on this side and one on this side. So I've put a regular presser foot back on my machine, and now I'm going to just put this ribbon right so that the edge of the ribbon lines up with the edge of my zipper. And I'm gonna just stitch it on with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm gonna go over it a few different times. So that's really secured in place. Okay. Just like that. And then we're gonna repeat that on the other end of our bag. And it can be a little bit trickier on the other side of the zipper because they're not quite as cinched together as they are at the end. So what you want to do is just sort of open your zipper up a little bit, pull that tape towards itself, and get your tab right on top. And again, we have the edge of the ribbon lined up with the edge of the bag in this case because the zipper goes a little bit past the bag. And we're going to stitch it on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance going over it a few different times. You want to make sure you're getting your zipper tape in your seam. so now it's attached. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want it connected to the zipper. Once these little ribbons are stitched in place, you're going to bring the outer layers together and the inner layers together, and you're going to stitch just down this edge with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and same over here, you're going to stitch these together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, once these pieces are stitched together, you're going to go ahead and go to your iron and press them open so that your seams lay nice and flat for your inner layer and for your outer layer. Next, you want to go inside and open up your zipper as much as you can, all the way. Then you're going to be turning your bag wrong side out. So you're going to pull the lining through the zipper opening and pull the whole bag out and tuck that inner layer inside so that your bag is wrong side out with the liner on the outside, just like this, okay? And then the outer layer is tucked away on the inside. Now make sure that your center seams are lined up nicely with each other and with the zipper. And then just go ahead and put a clip there so everything kind of stays together, and do that on the other side as well. So you want these seams to line up with each other, and then you want your zipper to line up with those seams. And then we're just going to clip it to kind of hold the bag in place. And then you're going to want to get some tailor's chalk or a pen or a pencil. I've got some chalk handy. And what we're going to do next, make sure that these folded edges are lying as nicely as they can. And we're going to measure from the folded edge towards the zipper. We're going to measure 1.5 inches on this raw edge from the folded edge, and we're going to put a little line right there 1.5 inches away from the fold on the raw edge. And we're going to do that on all 8 sides of the bag. So here on this spot, and then we're going to come across, measure 1.5 inches from this spot and put a mark. Then we're going to flip it around, do the same thing here. So measure 1.5 inches from the folded edge, and I'm just using my cutting mat to measure. And then repeat that on this side, 1.5 inches from the fold. Then turn the bag the other way around and repeat those same steps. So 1.5 inches from this folded edge is here, 1.5 inches from that folded edge is there. Flip it over, and again 1.5 inches from here is there, and 1.5 inches from this folded edge is here. Okay, so our bag now has 8 marks on it. It has 4 marks on each side on the lining fabric. Okay, what we're going to do next is bring these marks together to create our boxed corners. So you're going to bring this mark to the mark on the back side, okay, by creating a pleat in your bag and folding right at the marks and bringing them together right like that, okay? And make sure that on the inside things are, the raw edges are lined up with each other so that you get a nice, you'll be able to get a nice straight seam along this raw edge. So make sure that this is laying flat, these marks are touching, and then go ahead and clip them together. And then we're going to repeat that for all the corners of the bag. So again, we're going to bring this mark to this mark and have them connect. Make sure that the material on the inside of the bag is lined up nicely, so that raw edge is lined up, and you might want to straighten, kind of create a little bit more of a pleat there so that you can get a nice finished seam up here. And we'll put a clip. Okay, and then repeat that on the other end of the bag. So bring these pleats together, or these marks together by just continuing that pleat and making sure that the inside edges are going to be lined up with each other. And then we're going to get a clip right here. I like to use office binder clips because they're made of metal and they're really durable, and if they do break, you can recycle the metal pieces because it's hard to recycle plastic, unfortunately. Okay, so the last corner, we're bringing these marks together just like we did in all the other spots. Make sure your pleat looks okay there. Make sure that the inside raw edges are lining up with one another neatly, and then go ahead and clip it. Bigger clip would be better here, just like that. Okay, so this is what your bag should look like. And in the next step, we're going to stitch straight down this edge with about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So go ahead and pull off that first clip so you can get under your presser foot. And we're going to go straight down, but we want to do a back stitch at the start and the stop. And we're doing about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, I gotta move my next clip. And if you have a zipper getting in your way, go ahead and pull that closed so your bag lays a little more flat. This is a lot of material, but if your machine is pretty sturdy, you should be able to sew through all these layers. Okay. And now we do a back stitch. And it should look more or less like that. And then we'll go ahead and flip it and do the other side. So again, pull that first clip off, get your bag under the presser foot, and do a back stitch. And then just go all the way straight down. And watch out for your zipper if you're using metal. I have a knee bar on my machine, which is how I keep lifting my presser foot. And just keep going. And then again, a back stitch at the very end. Okay. And it should look something like that. So before we finish these raw edges, we want to trim the extra material away because that's going to make it a lot easier. So just make sure you're not cutting through any of your seams. So you don't want to cut the seam that you created for your little ribbon, and you don't want to cut through obviously your final seam here, but you do want to get rid of some of the bulk so that it'll be easier to add the binding. Okay, and do the same for the other side. Just trim away some of that bulk without messing up your seams. So now we're ready to attach the binding, and again, I'm just using scraps of fabric that are about 1.5 inches wide. If you're newer to sewing, you could use a wider piece of binding, and that will make this process even easier. But what we want to do first is stitch the binding, the scrap of fabric, onto the edge of the bag here, and then we'll be able to do some folding and get this whole raw edge enclosed in the binding. So first I'm just going to stitch it on one side, making sure that the center of my scrap is on the center of the bag, and just do one line of stitches here to start. Okay, so I've connected it right there, and now what we want to do is flip it over fold the short ends in, and then we're going to be creating a little finished edge by folding over the raw edge of the binding. So we want to fold it down a little bit and then fold it over again so that it fully encloses that raw edge. And what might be the easiest way to do it is just start on one corner. Let's get these threads out of the way. Just start on one corner by bringing this edge over, folding this down about 1/4 inch, and then folding the whole piece down like that, and then clipping it in place, and then repeat that for the other side. So fold this end in, fold this top edge down about 1/4 inch, and then fold the whole piece down over the edge so that this whole area is enclosed. And like I mentioned, if you're newer to sewing, starting with a wider piece of binding will be easier than a more narrow piece of binding. So now that this is clipped in place, we're going to take it to the machine and just stitch it straight down. Okay, so we want to get our bag under the presser foot without all of our folding coming out. So just carefully remove your clip, but keep all that nice folding in place, and get your bag under your presser foot. And we're going to go forward a bit, and then we're going to do a little back stitch, and then just go all the way down, making sure that you're catching this edge. And then a little back stitch at the end. Okay. So it should look like that. Okay, so once you've got that binding in place on one side, just go ahead and repeat that on the other side. And again, I'm going to just first stitch straight down so this piece of fabric stays in place, and then I'll do all that fancy folding that I did a second ago. Okay, so the second piece of binding is attached on both sides. And in a perfect world, you would have this row of stitches hidden by your binding or in your binding, but this is all on the inside of the bag, so I don't really worry too much about being able to see that stitching. It's not a huge deal. And now comes the super fun part of turning the bag right side out. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. I love it. And then just push those corners out, and it should look like this if everything went right. And always check your zipper, of course. Oh my gosh, I love it. I think I'm in love. It's adorable. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope that you get out there and make yourself some adorable pouches just like this one. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and subscribe to the Toiletries channel to get notified about all of our videos. We put out a new video on zero waste sewing, crafting, and living tips every single week, so I'll see you again very soon.